It is essential for us to understand the full scope of destruction floods can cause, not just to our buildings and houses, but also to our electrical systems and water and sanitation infrastructure. The sheer force of floodwaters can reduce homes, businesses, and public structures to ruins, leading to not only the loss of shelter, but also long-lasting emotional and financial impacts, displacing individuals and leaving communities in distress. Flooding can also disrupt the delivery of electricity to our homes, hospitals, and other critical facilities, resulting in power outages that hamper daily routines and hinder emergency response efforts. Not only that, floods can overwhelm sewage systems, contaminating our water sources and posing health risks. The scarcity of clean water and compromised sanitation facilities can further compound these challenges, increasing the risk of waterborne diseases and having serious impacts on public health and hygiene. Given this devastating impact of flooding, it is important that our generation takes action. We must prioritize the development of resilient infrastructure, incorporating designs and materials that can withstand floods. Early warning systems and disaster preparedness plans should also be implemented to save lives and minimize property damage. Additionally, we should be aware of the potential for flooding in our communities and develop strategies to mitigate its impact. By taking a proactive approach, we can reduce the severity of destruction caused by flooding and protect our buildings, electrical systems, and water and sanitation infrastructure. The destruction of habitats due to flooding can have far-reaching consequences, not only for the species that inhabit them, but also for the whole ecosystem. For example, the disruption of food chains can cause an imbalance in the local environment, leading to the disruption of entire ecosystems. Additionally, when habitats are submerged, many species may be forced to migrate, resulting in the displacement of wildlife and a reduction in biodiversity. This can be especially detrimental for species that are already endangered, as it may make it difficult for them to find new habitats that provide the same level of protection and nourishment as their original home. Pollution of water sources is another issue that arises from flooding. When habitats are inundated, contaminants such as fertilizers, sewage, and hazardous materials can be washed away and end up in nearby water sources. This can lead to water contamination, which can have devastating effects on both human and animal populations. In addition, flooding can disrupt the natural hydrological cycle, leading to changes in water levels and the salinity of water sources, which can further affect the health of aquatic species. The disruption of ecosystems and food chains can also have an effect on vegetation and agricultural land. Flooding can cause the death of crops and the destruction of agricultural land, resulting in a decrease in food production and economic losses for local communities. In addition, the disruption of ecosystems and food chains can impact the growth of vegetation, leading to a decrease in the carbon absorption capacity of the environment. This can have a long-term effect on the climate and further exacerbate the effects of flooding. Overall, it is clear that flooding can have a serious impact on the environment, resulting in displacement of wildlife habitats, pollution of water sources, disruption of ecosystems and food chains, and the effects on vegetation and agricultural land. Therefore, it is essential that we take action to reduce the risk of flooding and invest in resilient infrastructure and disaster management strategies to protect our environment and ensure a safe and secure future for ourselves and future generations. In addition to the disruption of ecosystems and food chains, floods can also have a drastic impact on vegetation and agricultural land. Floods can wash away fertile topsoil, burying it beneath a layer of silt and sediment, making it difficult for plants to grow. Floodwaters can also carry toxic pollutants and contaminants, which can damage crops and vegetation, leading to reduced crop yields and a decline in agricultural production. Furthermore, the spread of disease-carrying pests and insects is a common consequence of flooding, which can further damage crops and vegetation. The effects of flooding on vegetation and agricultural land can have serious implications for food security. Floods can destroy crops, reduce crop yields, and disrupt the distribution of food supplies, leading to shortages. Further than that, the destruction of agricultural land can have long-term effects on food security, particularly in developing countries with limited resources and infrastructure. Ultimately, flooding can lead to an increased risk of malnutrition, poverty, and hunger. The effects of flooding are far-reaching and can have devastating consequences. Not only do floods cause immense economic losses for farmers, they can also contaminate water sources, disrupt food chains, displace wildlife, and damage vegetation and agricultural land. This in turn can lead to food shortages, further exacerbating the economic losses suffered by farmers and affecting our food production and supply. Flooding can also deposit sediments and debris on agricultural fields, hindering their productivity and requiring extensive cleanup efforts. The loss of vegetation and degradation of agricultural land further contribute to the ecological and economic challenges brought about by floods. It is therefore essential that we take action to reduce the impact of flooding on our local environment. We can invest in nature-based solutions such as preserving wetlands and restoring natural floodplains, which act as buffers and absorb excess water during flood events. Implementing effective land use planning and ensuring responsible agricultural practices can also help minimize the vulnerability of our ecosystems to flooding and promote their resilience. To ensure that our local ecosystems are not adversely impacted by flooding, we must also recognize the interconnectedness of human and natural systems and work towards sustainable solutions that protect and restore our local ecosystems. This includes educating the public about the consequences of flooding, developing early warning systems to alert people of potential flooding, and providing financial resources to support those affected by floods. In conclusion, it is clear that the consequences of flooding extend beyond the damage to human infrastructure. They profoundly impact our local ecosystem, and it is our duty as responsible stewards of the environment to take action to reduce the impact of flooding on our local environment. Through investing in nature-based solutions, implementing effective land use planning, and recognizing the interconnectedness of human and natural systems, we can work towards sustainable solutions that protect and restore our local ecosystems. Moreover, floods can also have a devastating impact on individuals and communities, imposing a heavy financial burden on them. Not only can floods cause physical and emotional distress, but they can also put homeowners, renters, and business owners at risk of financial hardship due to the costly repairs and rebuilding that may be required. Furthermore, the costs of cleanup and recovery can be exorbitant, and the financial burden of rebuilding can last for years. Floods can also have a significant impact on tourism and local industries as well. Floods can make certain areas unsafe for visitors, leading to a drop in tourism and associated economic losses. Additionally, floods can damage crops, leading to losses for farmers and agricultural businesses. This can have a ripple effect, impacting the food supply and prices, as well as local businesses that depend on the agricultural industry. Therefore, it is important to recognize the economic impact of floods and to take action to mitigate the risks. This could include investing in flood control infrastructure, such as levees and dams, as well as developing more resilient communities through better land use planning and increased access to flood insurance. Additionally, it is important to create resilient ecosystems that can help reduce the impacts of flooding. By doing this, we can strive for a future where our communities and the environment can coexist harmoniously, resilient in the face of flooding and other environmental challenges. The financial burden on individuals and communities affected by flooding can be immense. Individuals may face property damage, loss of personal belongings, and even temporary displacement. The costs of repairs, replacing damaged items, and finding alternative housing arrangements can take a toll on personal finances and lead to debt. Communities may also struggle to recover, as the funds needed for reconstruction and assistance programs can be overwhelming, placing a heavy burden on their economic stability. Additionally, floods can have a devastating effect on tourism and local industries, both of which are important to regional economies. Flooded areas may become inaccessible, leading to cancellations of trips and a decline in tourist activity. Local industries such as agriculture, manufacturing, and services may suffer due to the disruption of supply chains, destruction of infrastructure, and decreased consumer spending. In order to address the economic effects of flooding, a multifaceted approach is necessary. Investing in resilient infrastructure such as improved drainage systems and flood prevention measures can help to reduce damage and minimize repair costs. Additionally, governments should provide financial assistance to individuals and communities affected by flooding, which can help to cover the cost of repairs and reconstruction. Furthermore, businesses should be encouraged to develop strategies to deal with any short-term losses resulting from floods, such as diversifying their supply chains in order to reduce the impact of disruption. Ultimately, taking proactive steps to protect against flooding can help to mitigate the devastating economic consequences for individuals, communities, and businesses alike. In addition to the ecological, economic, and infrastructural impacts of flooding, there are also profound social and humanitarian consequences that must be acknowledged. Flooding can cause displacement, poverty, and the loss of access to basic services and resources. People affected by flooding may experience trauma and mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The financial burden of flooding can also increase existing social inequalities, as those with fewer resources may be disproportionately affected by the destruction of their homes and businesses. Furthermore, the disruption of communities caused by flooding can lead to long-term social impacts. For example, the displacement of families can lead to the loss of social networks and support systems, resulting in increased social isolation and vulnerability. These social impacts can be especially destructive when combined with the economic losses incurred by floods. In order to address both the economic and social consequences of flooding, it is essential to develop proactive strategies that go beyond damage mitigation and recovery. This includes measures such as insurance coverage, early warning systems, incentives for local businesses, and recovery programs. It also involves diversifying and resilient economies that are less reliant on specific industries, promoting innovation, and supporting entrepreneurship. Through these strategies, we can strive to minimize the economic hardships caused by flooding and build a more resilient future, while also providing support for those affected by floods and helping to restore social networks and communities. Furthermore, natural disasters such as flooding can have a severe emotional and psychological toll on affected individuals, with long-term consequences that can last for years. Survivors of flooding may experience feelings of grief, anxiety, and depression, as well as difficulty in sleeping and eating. These mental health issues can be exacerbated by the physical and economic hardships that often follow a flood. People may struggle to cope with the disruption of their lives and the loss of their homes, possessions, and livelihoods. Providing emergency services and support can also be challenging in the aftermath of a flood. Many affected areas may lack access to basic necessities such as food, clean water, and medical supplies. Rescue and relief efforts can be hindered by damaged infrastructure and blocked roads, making it difficult for aid to reach those in need. Also, local governments and organizations may not have the resources or capacity to manage the large-scale response that is often required. It is therefore essential that the international community provides assistance and support to affected communities during times of crisis. The psychological and emotional effects of flooding cannot be overstated. Those affected by flooding are likely to suffer from varying levels of stress, anxiety, and trauma due to the loss of homes, personal belongings, and disruptions to their daily life. With the uncertainty of the recovery process, these psychological impacts can be further compounded. This is why it is so important to provide mental health support and counseling services, as well as community-based interventions, to help individuals and communities cope with the emotional challenges they face. Delivering emergency services and support is no easy task during and after a flood. Floodwaters can impede transportation, making it difficult to reach the affected areas. Access to healthcare, clean water, and sanitation facilities may be compromised, leading to further strain on relief efforts. Not only the sheer number of people affected and the need for temporary shelters and basic necessities can easily overwhelm response systems, highlighting the critical importance of effective coordination and preparedness in emergency response. In order to address the social and humanitarian impacts of flooding, a comprehensive approach is needed. Developing and implementing effective disaster management plans, such as early warning systems, evacuation protocols, and emergency response strategies, can help to minimize displacement of communities and ensure the safety of individuals. Furthermore, providing adequate resources for those affected is essential in order to ensure that individuals are able to rebuild their lives and communities. The devastating effects of flooding on communities cannot be overstated. Displacement, destruction of infrastructure, and loss of lives all highlight the need for effective mitigation and adaptation strategies. Preparedness is key to minimizing the impacts of flooding, and investments in infrastructure such as dams, levees, and drainage systems can help reduce the risk of flooding. Furthermore, prioritizing public health measures, such as clean water and sanitation initiatives, can minimize health risks and promote the well-being of affected individuals. Establishing mental health support services, community resilience programs, and social support networks can help address the emotional and psychological toll on flood-affected communities. Strengthening emergency response capacities, ensuring effective communication, and fostering collaboration between government agencies, NGOs, and community organizations are crucial to providing timely and efficient assistance during and after flooding events. In addition, it is important to raise awareness about the effects of flooding and develop educational programs to help communities become more resilient in the event of a flood. The social and humanitarian impacts of flooding are profound and demand our attention. By prioritizing preparedness, investing in infrastructure, and fostering collaborative partnerships, we can work towards minimizing the social and humanitarian consequences of flooding and ensure the well-being of our communities in times of crisis. Ultimately, effective mitigation and adaptation strategies are essential for building resilient communities and enhancing the ability of communities to withstand and recover from floods. Through collective action, resources, and support, we can strive to ensure the safety and well-being of all those affected by flooding. In addition to investing in flood control measures and infrastructure improvements, restoring and conserving natural floodplains and wetlands can also be an effective strategy for reducing flood risk. Wetlands act as natural buffers, absorbing and storing excess water during periods of heavy rainfall and slowly releasing it during drier conditions. Restoring and preserving these ecosystems can help mitigate the severity of floods and protect adjacent communities from the destructive force of floodwaters. Furthermore, promoting sustainable land use practices and urban planning is also essential for reducing vulnerability to flooding. Incorporating flood-resistant designs into urban infrastructure can create more resilient cities and reduce the risk of flooding in populated areas. For instance, planting trees and vegetation can reduce runoff and promote infiltration, while constructing permeable pavements and rain gardens can help absorb and store water. Implementing these strategies can help communities become more resilient and better prepared for future floods. In addition to preserving and restoring natural ecosystems, promoting sustainable land use practices and urban planning is essential to mitigating the impacts of flooding. Responsible land use decisions can help reduce the risk of flooding by avoiding construction in flood-prone areas, preserving natural drainage pathways, and promoting the use of permeable surfaces to facilitate water infiltration. By implementing comprehensive urban planning strategies that prioritize flood-resistant designs, green spaces, and effective stormwater management, we can create more resilient communities that are better equipped to withstand and recover from flooding events. Furthermore, it is critical that we integrate these strategies into a holistic approach, combining engineering solutions, community engagement, and policy frameworks. This will require collaboration between government entities, urban planners, engineers, environmentalists, and community stakeholders in order to ensure effective implementation. Such collective action is essential for addressing the threats of flooding, as it allows for the development of strategies tailored to the unique needs of each community, and provides an opportunity to share knowledge and resources. Ultimately, through the preservation and restoration of natural ecosystems, the promotion of sustainable land use practices and urban planning, and the collaboration of various stakeholders, we can work toward mitigating the impacts of flooding. By taking a proactive approach to flood risk management, we can create more resilient communities that are better prepared to withstand and recover from flooding events. On top of that, flooding can also have a significant impact on ports, which are critical to global trade and commerce. When ports are submerged, shipping lanes can become blocked, preventing vessels from entering or leaving the port. This can lead to the disruption of supply chains and the accumulation of vessels waiting to enter the port, resulting in costly delays. Furthermore, flooding can damage port infrastructure, including docks, piers, and terminals, leading to costly repairs and maintenance. In order to mitigate the effects of flooding on transportation systems, it is important to develop robust strategies and invest in infrastructure that can withstand extreme weather conditions. This includes the implementation of measures such as shoreline protection, floodproofing of roads and rail lines, and the construction of elevated roads and bridges. In addition, it is important for airports and ports to create emergency plans and evacuation protocols to ensure the safety of passengers and personnel. Lastly, it is essential to develop early warning systems that can help predict and prepare for floods before they occur. By taking the necessary steps to protect transportation systems from flooding, we can ensure the efficient operation of these essential networks.